Welcome to the MBD podcast, a show where we dig into what's actually working or not when it comes to scaling businesses with the people who've been there. Today's guest has definitely been there. So why don't you go ahead, let the people know where you've been and what you're up to.
Hey, nice to meet everyone. I'm Laith Murad. I am an executive marketer who's really focused on strategy. And, my focus for 20 plus years has always been on the customer. And I've worked with brands such as Nike, Neiman Marcus, American Eagle Outfitters, Hilton, Hertz, always with a maniacal focus on the customer. So I've worked in tech at Yahoo, Suite. I've worked across it. But the one truth that I've always learned is know who your customer is. And so I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Jason. It's great to chat with you and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. So in taking that account as a, like a senior executive and working with the business, where do you help them so that way they kind of are able to, scale that business and not fail when trying to understand who their customer or target market really is?
I think that's a great question. You have to understand a couple things. It's not as easy a question as it sounds, which is where is the business today? Are they in a growth stage? Are they, young? Are they trying to grow? Are they an established brand who's trying to make some pivots into new directions, new businesses? And so when you start to really think about that, what you really have to get down to is who is your target? And when I say who is your target, I get a lot of, hey, we're targeting Gen Z or we're targeting millennials and that's not really true because you can dissect each of those segments so many different ways. And when you do that, you start to really get to the point of who is your customer and what is your brand belief. And when you get to that, you start to say, who do we want to be as a brand? So you've got to really define yourself authentically as a brand and really say, this is who we are. This is who we're willing to get. And sometimes, hey, we don't want that customer because it's not the right customer for us. We want to stay true to who we are. And there are many, many brands who've really done that over the years, who've just kind of said, you may not like us for staying true to who we are, but that's who we are. And I think you see it in, Chick-fil-A is a great example. They have stayed true to who they are over decades. And, they've had some blowback before, but they've never wavered. And I think that is really, a sign of a brand who knows exactly who they are and who their customer is. And then they adapt and grow based on who their customer is, not trying to reimagine who they are as a brand. Because when you do that, then you're starting to bring in new customers and your old customers, and now you don't know what's going on. And that's a much more difficult value proposition to kind of do some wholesale shifts. It's happened, it's worked. Abercrombie is a great example of someone who has kind of shifted and moved from, the guy standing out with, no shirt on the street, on the corner of the store to actually, elevated their quality, moved it up, started to sell the lifestyle of who Abercrombie is and how they want you to feel when you shop at Abercrombie. And so it was about quality products, a better experience in store, but they shifted, but they knew where they were going and they didn't really go away from who their customer was. They just kind of reimagined and redefined who they are and who they want to be.
So I see two questions there. One, what is a good exercise to help a business figure out who they are? And then two is what's some good exercise to figure out who they sell to?
The exercise I love is the why exercise because it's one of those exercises that you think the answer is obvious, but it's really not. And it's one of the most difficult things for marketers to get to. So I worked at an appliance store and nobody wants to work in an appliance store, right? It was luxury, high-end appliances. It was an experience that really delivered the promise. And so you walked in, you had working fixtures, you had working, faucets, you could see it, you could actually test some ovens. And we're talking Sub-Zero, Wolf, top brands where you're spending $20, $30, $40, $50,000 to redo your kitchen or bathroom. So this is a high-end customer. So the experience was different. It wasn't like you just saw them on the wall and said, hey, I shower, twice a day, and I'm going to use this for the next 20 years. And I don't even know if I like the way the water is going to run because I can't see it run. And so that experience was brought to life, and you could see it and go, wow, I thought I'd like that. But now that I see the water flow, I would hate that shower head.
Mhm.
I want something else. I say that because then the question was, well, why? Why would I want to shop here? And what is it that I want when I'm redoing my kitchen? And so it's really about, how do you get into the mind of the customer? So you have to really define, who are you targeting? What does he or she or they look like? And how do they think? And so I'll use that example. I started to think that a lot of times people are like, oh, well, it's a luxury house. It's a, nice house. It's a luxury market. They want the best and the best. Well, they do, but it was also a fashion statement inside their home.
Mhm.
And so when you started to talk to them about, like, why would you want this? Here's a great wolf. This hits everything you need. And when you start to talk to the customers and you start to hear, yeah, that's great, but it's ugly.
Mhm.
Like, you're just like,
Yeah.
you realize that underlying everything was beauty was as important as functionality. And so you realize, I couldn't start saying this has 48,000 BTUs because nobody gave a,
Mhm.
crap. But I could start to say, hey, this stove was painted in a Ferrari factory, and start to tell the story of it and hear the bright colors and look at the statement it makes in your kitchen, if that's where you want to go. We had a Tiffany blue one. It made a fashion statement. So if you want fashion, that's where you could go. If you wanted functionality, here's where you could go. But you started to get to why. Are you trying to be a professional cook, or you barely cook at home, but you want something beautiful? And so getting to the why really is, to me, the hardest question and the toughest one for any executive to answer, and toughest one for you because it requires you to push that level deeper.
Mhm.
Push that level deeper, because the simple answer, and take workout equipment, fitness equipment. Why do you work out? And Jason, I'll ask you, why do you work out?
To feel better, to be
Feel
stronger.
better. Everybody wants to feel better.
Right.
So then the question is, Jason, do you coach kids? Do you have kids? Do you coach
Yeah,
kids?
yeah, yes, yeah.
Do you want to huff and puff, or do you want to be able to hang with them?
Wanna hang with them, of course.
Right. So your why could be, hey, I just don't want to miss that chance to coach my kids, run around with them, push myself, stay active. Maybe you want to travel the world. Maybe you want to take the family somewhere. That is your why. It's not just about, hey, I want to be healthier, because that's great. It's really because you want to be healthier so that you can
Mhm.
do this. So that is an important question to always ask. Like, hey, why do you want to do that? Okay, you do it to live healthier, so that what happens in your
Oh,
life?
that's a good addition to the why. Why so that?
And then you get to, and then it really takes someone to actually listen and
Mhm.
kind of hear between the lines. And I learned this from Hal Brierley, who was one of the godfathers of all loyalty programs, and working with Hertz a long time ago. He basically had a focus group in, I think it was Topeka, Kansas. And it was back in the day where consultants traveled every week,
Mhm.
same location, came in Monday, left on Wednesday, went back home, or what, Thursday, and then did the whole trip again. And they were doing a focus group, and they were talking about, airline miles, and do you want Hertz points, and what do you want, golf club? What do you want for these things?
Mhm.
And everyone's talking about all these great gifts they can get. And one person, and this is to Hertz's credit, said, I just don't want to wait in line 45 minutes to get my car. You know who I am. You know my name. Why
Mhm.
do I have to wait in line? And all of a sudden, Hal Brierley's, to his genius, said, we don't want to give them points. We don't want to do that. Let's just give them a faster way to get their car. And by the way, let's tell them their name. And so Hertz number one Club Gold was born, name and lights. You knew where your car was. You walked through, you moved it. To Hertz's credit, they actually believed and said, if we're going to do that, then let's make the experience exceptional. And so I think when you do know the why and you make that promise that we're going to give you a faster way to rent the car, how do you deliver that promise as well? And so don't go market, hey, we got a faster way to get your car. Oh, sorry, it's not ready yet for a couple months. Or, yeah, we kind of changed the line a little bit, but you still are waiting. So you have to kind of, you
Deliver
either
on the
have to
promise.
deliver the promise, or you hold off, because the experience is what builds belief in customers. The marketing is kind of the entry point. But if you're not delivering the promise, then I would say hold back on some marketing, which is not a great thing for a marketer to say, by the way.
No, I've seen it happen where I've even seen it where marketing over promises and the service is like, what are you guys doing? That's not what happens. They come in here, they feel that they got taken advantage of, and then we'll keep some of them. Yeah, some the numbers go up, but these aren't happy customers we're keeping. They're just waiting for the next thing to get out of here.
Yep. And I think that's the problem is, marketing has kind of performance marketing in particular is chasing clicks, is
Mm-hmm.
chasing, return on ad spend, trying to show some movement, incremental small movement, but they've lost the why. They've lost building the belief. They've lost the, hey, I want you to care about the brand because we care about you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really difficult, it sounds easy. And when brands do it, they do it because it's so simple.
Mm-hmm.
And that simplicity is probably the hardest thing to do. Or Ring just did it with their kind of, show us the finger campaign in New York. But the
Mm-hmm.
purpose of that was they got your attention. And it was about, the older generation saying, we're going to live healthier. And that's where they wanted to go, because the Oura Ring they didn't talk about the 82 different functions they
Yeah.
track in your body and your health. They never mentioned a thing about that. But what they did is they said, you can live healthier because this ring on your finger actually will tell you the story of how to live healthier. And so they focused on, why do you want this ring? It wasn't to track my sleep or how bad I sleep. In my case, it was to track, hey, how do I live a longer, healthier life so that maybe I have grandkids, maybe I want to travel, maybe I finally have a chance, I've retired and I'm leaving, or hey, I want to run, 10 more marathons before I can't walk anymore. And so they got to that by simply just, kind of breaking the patterns. They didn't talk about functions, specs. They didn't talk about any of that. They broke the pattern and said, show us your finger.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it in a way that got your attention and people took notice. And then they started to look into the brand, and that curiosity really drove people into it. And so I think that's where I try to get to, is get to the why, so that I can, and it just pushes you. And it's a hard question, honestly, because a lot of brands will want to stay, no, this is who we are. And it's like, but your customer is saying this is who you are. So we have a disconnect. So how do we reconcile that connection? And then how do we deliver the experience that the customers expect?
Now, yeah, the why. Where how can a company or business know when their why isn't working and
I
that they need
think
to ask the question, right? Like they need to dig deeper.
they need to ask the question, but I'm a marketer who plays two sides of my brain. So the why is getting to the emotional side, the emotional connection side, to really understand you. I think if you're expressing the why, it shows up in retention. It shows up in advocacy in the data side. It shows up in chatter, advocacy, retention. It shows up in the experience itself. You start to see increase in spend, increase in frequencies of the customers, because they believe and they think that you know who they are, and they start to say, I can relate to that brand. They deliver, and that's the brand I connect with. emotionally. And so when you start to see that emotional connection, you start to shift what I say paid and performance, which is driving your growth, into organic, and belief is driving your growth, and paid becomes the boost. So
Hmm.
you want to boost it, paid becomes the boost, and you're not beholden to all the platforms saying, costs have gone up, we're going up 10% too. And if you're spending $1 million a month or $1 million a quarter, 10% starts to be,
Yeah.
100,000, 100,000, 100,000. And now you start to take notice. It doesn't sound like a lot when you're spending, $1,000,
Yeah.
you know, but it is a lot when you start to spend real significant money that a lot of the major brands do. The only way to shift that is to get people to say, I like that brand and I want to go there because of X. Costco. Why do people shop Costco? It's not just because of the products in the bulk and, I need 82 rolls of toilet paper. It's because they know if they're not satisfied with the product, Costco will just make sure it's okay. That half-eaten roast, I mean, I've been in line where people have like half-eaten rotisserie chickens. They're like, it didn't taste good. And Costco's like, thank you, throws it away, but gives them back their money. And it's that belief. I think Trader Joe's hasn't shifted
Hmm.
at all, and they were just received the number one reputation. And so you start to go, okay, who is that brand and who do I believe in? Patagonia told you to like repair your jacket, not buy a new one. That belief in that experience starts to say, I want to be with that brand. And guess what? I'm going to start telling people about it because my experience was so good. And what they promised me, I got.
Word of mouth, strongest form of marketing you probably get. Um, awesome. So if someone's listening, trying to scale right now, right, trying to understand who they are, what's one piece of advice you wish you had earlier?
I was fortunate in early in my career. The first thing I learned was know your customer. And I had a boss who really was like, get inside, and I was working retail, get inside her head, understand exactly how she thinks, why she thinks, what she wants. You know, if she's shopping for lipstick, I had a data person say to me, "Oh, well, average is 7 lipsticks," and I'm like, I don't know a woman alive that doesn't have 20. Like, like, and so then you start to go again back to the why. I was fortunate that I had a boss that really said, get to the why. And it was like, hey, am I going to sell you another variation of red? Or am I going to sell you that you actually have a holiday party coming up? And wouldn't this look good on you?
Hmm.
And that all of a sudden makes the customer go, oh, yeah, I do need a new outfit, and that lipstick would look really good. Oh, this is great. Or, oh my gosh, those shoes would look fantastic at the holiday party. And now you're selling them why they are shopping, not just what they're shopping for. And so that was one of the greatest pieces of advice. Then I talked about Hal Brierly. I worked under him for, good 10 years. And one of the things he said was, which is incredibly valuable, which is know the data and then segment the data, because if you look at averages alone, you often miss the story,
Hmm.
because the average saying lipstick, average woman has 7 lipsticks, we're not going to target them. Well, there's a group that are buying 15 who could probably buy 20, and there's a group who's only buying 2 who could probably get to 7.
Hmm.
So how do you start to segment? And so really making sure you understand the data and you understand what it is. And then I'll make one last turn for you. I had a piece of advice that I didn't learn until I was at Yahoo, and I started working deep with the engineers to actually understand the data bases, how they were built, where you could actually access data and what fields were available and what fields weren't. That's a skill that I think every marketer should be able to do, which is don't just ask for a report, know what you can ask for. Sit down with the engineers, let them understand why you want the report, what you're trying to figure out, as opposed to saying, hey, can I get a report? How did this campaign do? How are the customers doing long term? There's a lot if you knew some of the questions, if you said, hey, I want to know, Jason, I want to capture your birth date, and by the way, I want to capture, your city and county. And they're like, why do you want that? I think that'll help me because I'm going to do some local marketing.
Mm-hmm.
If you start to talk to the engineers and they start to say, well, I can give you city pretty easily from zip code, but county, I have to reference something. It's going to take 6 weeks. Is it that important? You start to understand, hey, that was just a ask. I actually am now working with engineers. Oh, you can do zip code. Great. What else can I do with that?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, do you have the field where it says this was a gift? Do you save that field in retail? No, we don't save that. So I buy a piece of jewelry for my, partner in crime. Okay, great. Well, you didn't know it was a gift. So now you're telling me, how did that look on me when you knew it wasn't for me?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's starting to really, I think at some point people early need to sit with the engineering, data engineering teams and say, like, what do you have? What don't you have? How hard would it be to get this field or that field, or to understand the customer? And once you do that, I think it makes you a better marketer because you know what data you can actually talk to, and you can then focus. And then that's the last thing is try to do 3 to 5 things really, really, really well, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to 10 to 12 things. Because a lot of times, and you should know this from your business, it's like, what else can we do? What else can we do? How else can we
Yeah.
grow? Start to spread resources so thin that your incremental jump is this, as opposed to taking a giant leap by focusing on 3 things, and all of a sudden you really moved the market.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, where can people connect with you or learn more about what you're doing?
A lot. I have a newsletter on LinkedIn, and I'm active on LinkedIn, and that's probably the best way to find me. So
Awesome.
LinkedIn, Laith Murad, and happy to connect with anybody.
Thank you. Well, thank you for taking the time.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Pleasure, Jason.
Yeah.